Why am I in the game over again? What happened?
Are you kidding me? What's the last thing you remember?
The last thing I remember? Oh, right! I was betting that I could actually suplex a gorilla. Oh.
Dumb ways to die.
Alright, fine. Let's do this. What game are we playing now?
Well, today you're going to be playing Mario's Time Machine. But for the NES and the SNES.
No! So, Mario's Time Machine is another game created by the same studio that brought you the classic Mario is Missing game starring Luigi. Originally for the PC, these games both got versions on the NES and SNES. I can't play the PC version because the Game Over doesn't have DOS at the moment. Last time, I only played the SNES version of Mario is Missing. The reason is that the NES and the SNES are pretty similar, so I focused on the better versions. However, this time around, both the NES and SNES versions are really different, so I'm going to actually focus on both. But I did play the SNES version as a kid once. I couldn't figure out anything at all, so I deemed the game terrible and gave up on it. Luckily, it was a rental and not something my parents bought. Look, I'm well aware this game needed the manual, but most of the time, I didn't read the manual. I wasn't great at reading back in the day. If I couldn't figure the game out, I'd eventually get bored of it really quickly. However, given that this game was trying to teach me shit, I probably would have gotten bored with it anyway. I didn't even know there was an NES version of the game growing up, but given that the NES was kind of dead to me at that point, I'm not shocked I never found out. But that's all the history I have for this game. I say we get things started for real and do this. Let's do it. Let's take on Mario himself. I know. Takes on Mario? Oh my gosh. Hey, last time I blamed Luigi, but Luigi isn't even in this game. So the story in both versions is that Bowser has somehow built a time machine. I guess it's Bowser's Time Machine and the title of the game is a filthy lie. The cover art is a lie too if you have the NES version. Anyway, with this time machine, Bowser has traveled to points of history, taking with him historic artifacts that help shape history itself. I say that knowing that both versions have you returning an apple to Mr. Newton in some form, but I'm getting ahead of myself just a little. Hell, the NES version even has Bowser kidnapping Yoshi for some reason or another, but yeah, some of these items are really stupid. You have the Battle of Orleans, and somehow Bowser stole Joan of Arc's shield. Why? Aren't there spares that she could just use somehow? Oh, better yet, in the NES version he stole Lincoln's hat. The game even states that Lincoln wouldn't have signed the Gettysburg Address if he wasn't wearing it during his, speech. Yeah, the NES is a terrible place to actually try and learn something. This is really dumb. They got the date wrong. Lincoln wasn't even wearing his hat during the speech originally. The SNES version does a better job writing out like a textbook, but some of the items are still very silly. Beethoven lost a music sheet? What, he doesn't have a spare of that either? Also, what exactly is Bowser trying to achieve here? Is he trying to make money like the last game? Why even tell Mario he's doing this? He does that in the SNES version. I guess he wants to make the greatest museum? But he also wants to change history back to the Dark Ages, which is very counterproductive. If history changes that much, Bowser's artifacts won't mean a damn thing. If he changes history, historic artifacts lose their significance now, don't they? This is just dumb. Oh, and if you're thinking that you can just identify the objects by their sprites, you can't. Isn't that fun? For the most part, though, the SNES game doesn't look good. Uh-oh. Look, Mario looks fine. Bowser in the final cutscene looks like utter hell. And while the historic figures look good, they look so contrastly different from Mario, they clash. And hard. Look, the sprites Mario is talking to, they remind me of like the Oregon Trail style of games. And I'm also betting that was the point. However, Mario's sprite looks incredibly different. I did some research, and apparently that was like the one thing Nintendo really nitpicked on during the development, making sure Mario looks like himself. I guess that would be why the art style here clashes on the SNES. However, there are some positives. The surfing kinda looks cool, and like I stated, the historic figures are nice. I will say the music kind of works. Most of it is from Mario is Missing and remixes music from Super Mario World for sure. Props, though, to Castle 3 music. Seems to be an original and not bad listen, though none of the music is as good as actual Mario games. Anything else you might hear, though, is basically copyright-free familiar tunes. This is at least decent, I'll give them credit for that. However, the NES version looks great. Everything at least feels somewhat Mario here. Sure, the clock blocks are kind of weird, but they work well enough. And these levels actually have Koopas and what I think are Hammer Bros. I'm not entirely sure, they don't actually throw hammers. People even show up briefly too. Yeah, the 2 times I've actually seen people, they were slain by Koopas, destroying history as we know it. But luckily Mario returned a math equation, right? The Koopas even wear space helmets while on the moon, and yes, there is an actual moon level here. Honestly, these look really decent. The moon, the Berlin Wall, the Gettysburg, the Olympics, all of this looks pretty good for an NES game, and even Bowser looks kind of decent, though the sprite is straight out of Super Mario Bros. 3. Also, the people here look like they kind of match up with Mario. I mentioned them earlier. They kind of look like Mario. Hey, that works. The music is also more original here from the NES version as well, but none of it's super good. It works overall, though, and isn't terrible, so I guess it's a win. Alright, let's jump back to the SNES version, and yes, Mario can jump in this game. I think he can run, he can talk to people. All of that's about worthless in this game other than talking to people. The real thing you want to do is grab one of the items on Bowser's shelf and then do freaking homework. Yeah, no kidding. You literally do multiple answer homework. You'll either have to look up the answers, probably the easiest way, or you can go to that time period and talk to the people from there. It's how it's supposed to work anyway. You look at your homework, then bust out the time machine. It comes down, you slowly press dials until you get the correct location and time. It feels like it takes forever. Then afterwards, you can talk to people until you fill out the homework page. And then after filling it all out, you can return the item in question. This is really stupid. Doing homework isn't fun in any way, shape, or form. You wander around, talk to people, ask questions just to fill out homework on something that is slightly interactive. The only real gameplay is the one thing that makes this slightly better than interactive textbook, the surfing segment. Yes, when you hit the time machine and you get the date, whether you put in the correct one or not, you get to surf through time. You collect 10 mushrooms, yes 10, and you avoid sea urchins. Once you collect all 10, you hit one of the whirlpools. If you got the date and place right, you'll end up there. If not, you'll end up right back in Bowser's Castle, which, if you hit a whirlpool before you get all 10, you also end up back in Bowser's Castle. Outside of that, though, the entire thing is homework. Let's look at the NES version and... Wait, is this Mario Bros? Like the arcade game? Don't get me wrong, this is kind of a crappy version of it, but it's here. You bump Koopas from underneath and take them out and get the item. Nice. Then you have the time machine. Instead of talking to people, you just hit blocks in the platforming-like level. Yeah, jumping is actually useful here. Don't get me wrong, jumping has no momentum and still absolutely sucks, but it works for the most part. You basically are encouraged to explore areas before getting the item. After learning what kind of item is supposed to go where, with a better time machine setup due to not having to cycle through a bunch of dials, then you can grab the item. Then you can take the item to the correct location, drop it off, or you stomp Koopas again. This actually is a video game. Wow. Hey, you can kill enemies in this game too, though they really can't hurt you. But yeah, no homework, no surfing, just light platforming and learning. Hey, not bad. Now that being said about the NES version, the levels aren't exactly well designed. There are times that I swear you can't even get some of the information blocks at all. Not only that, but some of these areas require some annoyingly tricky jumps to actually get to where you need to go. Also, the Mario Bros. Minigame never changes. Yeah, you have to play the same game of Mario Bros. Every time you need the item. Hooray? Also, the NES version is incredibly short. Overall, none of these levels are really fun, and I swear some of them are broken, so that's neat. No, sadly, the nugget of decent gameplay didn't help too much here. The SNES version doesn't fare much better. Almost every area is a smaller area with a few doors to look through with an NPC to help with the homework. The surfing is randomly generated with mushrooms and urchin locations, but outside of that, it's the same damn surfing minigame over and over again. This is actually worse than the NES version. At least Bop and Koopas is somewhat quick. You can also surf after the slow-ass time machine part of the game too. Hooray. Look, nothing really builds in difficulty in either game. These levels are absolutely boring. And honestly, this makes these games more boring too. I hate to bring it up, but Mario is Missing did a better job making the cities bigger. It sucked, but at least it kinda did something with the concept. It did a better job, not being broken like the NES levels too. And while I'm discussing the lack of content, let's talk about there just not being any extra things to do. There's no secrets. Basically, there's a time score, I guess if you want to speedrun the game. Yay? In the SNES version, you can speedrun the surfing sections, but if I'm going to be honest, as fast as I tried to complete these, I never really got a decent score. So even that's kind of shit. Look, the levels are incredibly garbage in both versions. There are no secrets, there's no reasons to replay the game outside of speedrunning, which is even then still really absurd. The writing is horrendous in the NES version, but is okay and functions in the SNES version. The SNES version is less charming, however, due to the clashing art styles. Luckily, the music isn't terrible, and the sprite work in the NES version is pretty decent. The gameplay in the NES version is decent too, with better working time machine and, moves that actually give a damn. The SNES version has the time machine, but working it is slow and annoying, and the surfing is lame after about the third time doing it. Most of Mario's moves aren't utilized, and the gameplay is mostly doing homework. Clearly, the SNES version is worse than the NES version. The SNES version is just the worst. One of the most boring games for the SNES library in general. It gets an impressively boring 1 out of 10. The NES version, however, is bad, but it easily better overall due to the charming gameplay being decent, managing to score a 3 out of 10. Overall, one of these fares better than Mario is Missing, and the other one sucks. The reason that neither game is an outright slog, both are just shorter games in general, but the SNES barely scratches out a 1, so that's still pretty bad. Even while I don't mind the music, it's just the worst version of songs you've heard before, outside of Castle 3, so even that, it fails there. It is a worse experience than Mario is Missing outright. However, the NES game kind of works. The gameplay isn't great, but it functions and utilized, and the time machine is easier to deal with. Plus, there's no homework segments. That's already better in general. The game is also rather charming, all things considered, so overall, I liked it a lot better, but yeah, it's still pretty bad. If you have to play any of these games, Mario's Time Machine on the NES had at least some resemblance of fun, but overall, these games suck, and I'm throwing in Mario is Missing for that one too. However, I'm glad I'm done with them for now, and it is time to leave the game over. The only real issue is, I'm bringing a friend. I'm only bringing him to fight him in the next review though, so be prepared. A Mario villain that hasn't seen a game in a very long time.
But you already defeated Wart and reviewed Super Mario Bros. 2.
Well, yes, and I saw Wart in the Switch remake of Link's Awakening. No, this guy is even more obscure. Let's get out of here, metalhead. But first, let's finish this video. If you liked the video, leaving a like and comment as well as subscribing and hitting the bell icon all really help my channel. So, until next time, my minions, take care. What? No, metalhead, you can't ride shotgun back.